It's Anything Goes Friday. You know, I have shared my rant with you in large part. I was, I watched the most of the RNC this week. I thought it was interesting that in Donald Trump's speech last night, which all the networks carried, which millions more people saw. I mean, this was the first introduction to Donald Trump for a lot of Americans, and at least as a politician. And he'd never used the word conservative. Maybe I missed it, but I don't think I heard him use the word conservative. I think I only heard him say Republican once. The Republican Party has become, or at least this, on the presidential end, the Republican Party has become the Trump Party. And, Robert Perry, actually, somebody in the chat room posted this, and I thought it was a really good one, and I appreciate it. It showed up over at, what was the website? Here it is. The National Interest. Trump versus Hillary is actually nationalism versus globalism. And I think Robert Perry is absolutely right on this. And in fact, I have been saying this for years. I wrote a book, Rebooting the American Dream, which has a chapter on immigration and a chapter on foreign policy and a chapter on trade. And in that book, I was suggesting that where our immigration policies really went south was when Reagan stopped prosecuting rich white employers for hiring people who are in this country illegally. When Donald Trump was hiring people who are not citizens of this country, he should have gone to jail, which would diminish radically the demand for labor, undocumented labor, which, would have eliminated, quote, the problem, as it were, of people coming to this country, seeking opportunity, because the opportunity wouldn't be there. But all that said, here we are. Reagan stopped enforcing the law in 1986, and it hasn't been enforced since then. We still don't put employers in jail. And I keep saying, we don't have an illegal immigrant problem, to use the Republican language. We have an illegal employer problem with regard to immigration. With regard to foreign policy, there's a chapter in my book, Rebooting the American Dream, called They Will Steal It. And I'm telling the story of, when Dick Gregory and I were on a plane flying to Africa, to Uganda specifically, back in 1980 or 81. During in the aftermath of the war with Idi Amin. And we're on the plane, and he's just telling me this story, and he says, you know what I don't understand? I don't understand why America's running around the world trying to shove our way of life down people's throats with the barrel of a gun. He says, when you've got something good, you don't have to force it on people. They will steal it. And he was absolutely right. And so I titled the chapter, They Will Steal It, and said, we need to have a far more humble foreign policy. And instead, since 1997, our Defense Department, the Department of Defense has tripled in size. Tripled since 1997. And on trade, I'll open the book with the story of George Washington clamping down on free trade. I opened the book with the story of George Washington violating British law, which was no longer in effect because this was after we had won the Revolutionary War, but still. The British law had been that fine clothing could not be made in the United States, and Daniel Hinsdale, a tailor in Connecticut, had been making illegally fine men's clothing. And now it was legal, of course. It had been legal for a couple of years at this point, but he was basically the nation's best high-end tailor, and George Washington sent Henry Knox to Connecticut to get him a suit, took his measurements to get him a suit he could be sworn in, he could be inaugurated in. And George Washington was inaugurated in an American-made brown wool suit. He then changed into British-made formal black wear, because there wasn't any of that available in the United States, for the official portrait, which hangs at the White House. And this is all a matter of history. And then George Washington proceeded to put high import tariffs on imported goods that he thought should be manufactured in the United States. high export tariffs on our raw materials so that we wouldn't be supplying cotton to England. We could supply it to our own folks. It started funding, actually appropriating government money and using it to support industries that he felt that we needed. And the whole plan is laid out in my book. And these are not Democratic or Republican concepts. These are simply pragmatic, this is what works things. You have to have if you're going to be a country, you have to have borders and some sort of policy, particularly with regard to employment, with some sort of policy around that. It's, every country in the world does this. And basically we did it until 1986 when Reagan, just said, okay, I'm not going to enforce the law anymore. Which is not some anti-immigrant screed. I mean, I'm all in favor of comprehensive immigration reform. We've got 11, 12, 13, 14 million people here without documentation, and they're being exploited by these employers. A, put the employers in jail. B, create a path to citizenship for these people. You don't need a friggin' wall, though. I mean, the wall is like the stupidest idea. Mitt Romney actually had this right. If you prosecute the employers, there will be no jobs for people who are not citizens. And if there's no jobs for people who aren't citizens, they will, to quote Mitt Romney, they'll self-deport. In other words, they'll leave. He was ridiculed for that. But it's true. And I'm not, a Republican, and I'm not here to promote Romney's policies or anything like that. But my point is that this is basic nationalism. And it's not the kind of sick, twisted, evil nationalism that leads to, what happened in Germany in the 1930s. This is the kind of nationalism that we've practiced in the United States for most of our history, which is basically, putting America first in all regards. And like I said, I have been saying that on this program for 11 or 12 years, however long we've been doing this show. 13 years? I don't know how long it's been. How long? When was 2003? That's 13 years. Okay. And I said, in fact, you can go back. I mean, look at shows that basically that Bernie and I did even. 2 years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago. Senator Sanders and I talking about how whichever political party starts saying, we are going to repudiate these free trade agreements, and we're going to go with a protectionist trade policy, an America First trade policy, not a phrase that Bernie has ever used to the best of my knowledge. But, I'm using it because Donald Trump is using it now. I realize it has, kind of a dark, or not kind of, it has a very dark background back in the World War II era when it was, part of basically the Bund. But it resonates. It resonates with middle America. And the Democratic Party needs to wake up and get with the program. And by the way, it's not the entire Democratic Party that's sound asleep, because virtually everybody in the Democratic Progressive Caucus, I think, would probably agree with me on pretty much everything I've said. You might have a debate on immigration, but other than that, I think, these are straightforward policies. And what I've been saying is the party that takes these positions is going to start winning elections. And so what happens? Donald Trump comes along and takes these positions in opposition to his own party and his own vice president. Now, I don't, frankly, believe him when he says he's going to do things, but I know that this kind of rhetoric is capable of winning elections. He just won the Republican nomination.
To watch more clips from our programs, hit the Watch More Videos button over here. And please be sure to hit the handy-dandy subscribe button so you'll always be up to date. Tag, you're it.